Good morning, Scottsville. Today I want to speak on how does a family grow. And the reading today is from Ruth chapter 4, verses 16 through 22. I want to open with a nursery rhyme. And if you're over the age of 40, you might remember this. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells, and pretty maids all in a row. Well, that's how Mary let her garden grow. But let's ask Ruth how she enabled her family to grow. As usual, 3 thoughts. The first thought I want to leave with you today is her family grew in its impact on Bethlehem. I want you to notice in chapter 4 the change that happens. We go from bitterness to praise. Through the birth of Ruth's child, God reimburses Naomi with happiness. Naomi experiences the incredible privilege of being fussed over by the community and actually being the center of attention. Something that she didn't have when she first arrived in Bethlehem. Also, through the birth of this child, Naomi rediscovers who she is. Notice that she does not change her name this time. When she arrived in Bethlehem and everyone was calling her Naomi, she said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, but call me Mara, because bitterness has grabbed hold of my soul." And through the birth of this child, Bethlehem rekindles worship of God. Remember, Israel had been through an incredibly difficult time. It is generally accepted that Ruth was probably written in about the time of the Judges. As we well know, in the time of the Judges, Israel was regularly run over by her enemies and overwhelmed by problems because of enemy nations. Israel struggled with idolatry, constantly going between worshipping idols and worshipping God. And here, the birth of Ruth's child rekindles worship, as they immediately recognize that this child is born not because of human interaction only, but also because of God's work. But let us also see from unknown to famous the significance of who was the reason behind the praise item. It was Ruth. Ruth, who when she arrived in Bethlehem was an unknown. Ruth, who when she was first referred to, was referred to as the Moabitess. And now, Ruth becomes the center of everything that we are going through and all the reality of what's going on. The significance of how this all happened behind the scenes, this was a miracle. And I want to say to you today that every birth is a miracle. Look at your children, be they in their teens or be they in their 40s. Look at your children, think about them, and recognize that childbirth is a miracle. It's not an ordinary event. And the significance of when this was done behind the ceremony, there was of course a method involved here. Remember that Ruth and Boaz first get married and then they have their child. This is extremely important, especially in today's world where shacking up has become the norm amongst couples. But I also want you to notice the care that takes place here. Naomi takes this child and looks after this child herself. And I want you to know that you can never ever be too old to look after a child. Yes, you may be in your 70s, but you're a grandparent. You can still look after your grandchildren. You may even be a teenager, but you can still look after a child. One of the great privileges that Dominique and I have in particular is with Blast. as we see the ongoing work of our teens in the life of the children who come to Blast. It's a wonderful privilege to watch them interact with these children. You are never too old. You are never too young. But you can also never be too intimate. We need to be relevant. We need to be personal. And we need to be loving. This, in its essence, is what Naomi does as she takes care of her grandchild. My second thought is Ruth's family grew in its impact on Israel. Obed's birth is the beginning of a wonderful history in Israel. But I want you to notice that this child is part of a historical timeline. History is not about times and dates. History is about the people who lived during those times and dates. And we need to understand that every single person who is born is part of history. It's not just about numbers. And timelines are not only names and surnames. Timelines are the lives that impacted other names and surnames. You have a wonderful privilege to be involved in history. And you may not be famous, you may not be Bill Gates, but certainly you can indeed impact the world around you and impact everyone else who is there. Every child is leading up to historical moments. You never ever know what your child might become. I want you to remember that when Obed was born, Ruth could never have known that he would be the grandfather of King David, the greatest king in Israel's history. And you never know who your child might raise. You never know what's coming next. And I want you to see this in chapter 4. You have Obed, then Jesse, and then David. But also recognize the end of misery. A gift that was given to Dominique and myself when Richard was born shares this sentiment. And I want to read to you what it says. It's a little plaque which was given to us. And it says, God sent you down to bring us joy, to brighten up each day. An angel from heaven so tiny, yet great in every way. This blessing cannot be measured in myrrh or treasures rare. A baby is golden unto itself, a heavenly jewel we share. But it's not just a little gift given to Dominique and myself that epitomizes the reality of what a child can do to you. Scripture also gives us a wonderful insight into what it means to be a parent. Psalm 127 verse 3 says, sons are a heritage from the Lord, children a reward from Him. And that is a reality we need to see and understand. Children are not a curse. Yes, they might drive us crazy sometimes, and we might be looking for the nearest wall to climb. But I can tell you one thing, from being a parent myself, children are indeed a blessing. And it's a wonderful privilege to share in their life as a dad and as a parent. My third thought today is the family grew in its impact on the world. Now I need you to move to the New Testament, and I want you to take a look at Matthew chapter 1. That is the genealogy of Jesus, and I want you to notice that Ruth's name appears in that genealogy. Never ever forget that your life does not only have short-term consequences. Your life could have repercussions 20, 30, 40, even 50 years from now. Ruth, through her life, played a part in the birth of the Messiah. She would never have known it. She would never ever have foreseen it. but she knew that she had to do what she had to do. I also want you to know that you must never ever forget that your impact does not only rely on national pride. Ruth was a Moabitess, and yet she appears in the genealogy of the King of Israel as well as the King of Kings. And the fact that she was a Moabitess did not matter. God still used her. I want you to take a look next at John 3 verse 16. And I want you to notice the reason for Jesus. Ruth was not only personally involved in her own love story, Ruth was also involved in God's love story. And Ruth was not only present at her own birth scene. Spiritually, in a sense, Ruth could be considered to have been present at the nativity scene. Her name was in the genealogy of Jesus. But notice the purpose of Jesus. Jesus came to save sinners. This means that Ruth had a part in the salvation story. And today, every single one of us has a part in that story. We need to play our part in the salvation of the world. If we don't, the world goes to hell. If we do, then we can be part of saving sinners and bringing people to earth, to heaven rather. I need to close, and as I do so, I want to be very respectful and cautious about what I will say next. As we talk about growing your family's impact, let us not forget that one day someone, more than likely a member of your family, is going to stand at your funeral and pay tribute to you. But rather than live your life for a nice tribute then, why not begin to live the tribute now? You see, you are not going to hear the tribute that is spoken at your funeral. You are not going to see the people who are at your funeral. So rather than wait until then to receive like a nice send-off, let us live life now so that the tribute can be a reality today rather than only when someone speaks at your funeral. In the words of a song sung in I think it was the 90s, might have been the late 80s, early 90s, by Mike and the Mechanics. It's too late when we die. The impact needs to be felt now. And granted, like I said, your life could be seeing its repercussions 50, 60, 70 years from now. But you won't necessarily be part of that. So let's be part of growing our family's impact while we still live, so that we can share in the joy and the glory of seeing the world change, especially in a time such as COVID-19 that we are going through today. This brings to a close my mini-series in the book of Ruth. I trust that you have been blessed by what you have heard and what you have read. And I really encourage you, don't leave Ruth behind. It's a very short book. It takes 15, maybe 20 minutes to read in one sitting. Read it often. Learn from it always. And let God speak to you more and more through Ruth as you yourself develop your own personal knowledge of her life. Every blessing to you, and hopefully we'll see each other soon again with a new series that I'm hoping to present to you at a later stage. Take care of yourselves. God bless.